I think the key thing to keep in mind is that Bitcoin is already working. It's been operating nonstop for practically 10 years. And it is already, I don't remember the exact number right now, but it is already one of the top 20 largest valued currencies in the world. So it's already bigger than many currencies of many other nation states. And most importantly, in its functional role right now, Bitcoin is the only working alternative to central banks. In other words, if you'd like to send money from here to China, your only option up until the year 2008 was to go through the central bank. Now, after Bitcoin was invented, you're able to do it with the press of a button in an automatic way that doesn't rely on anybody else, in the same way that when you call somebody, you just press a bunch of buttons, but there's nobody needed to let the call go through. It's become a mechanical, electronic process that takes, that happens because machines do it, and it's not because people intermediate it. So Bitcoin is already allowing for transfers across international borders and is already breaking central banks' monopoly over that. So I think the notion that Bitcoin has been failing, I think is completely unrealistic, or the notion that Bitcoin's likelihood of succeeding has been declining and is vanishingly small, I think is contrary to reality, because in reality we see that Bitcoin has been growing nonstop over the last 10 years. And if you've looked at the growth rate and you think that, oh, Bitcoin hasn't grown fast enough over the last 10 years, clearly you haven't looked at the growth rate. It couldn't possibly have grown any could, but it's been an enormously fast growth rate. And the notion that we could get a monetary system, and this is really, I think, the main problem with Professor Seljan's comments, the idea that Bitcoin has to basically be born ready to handle everybody's transactions overnight and to have all of the world's liquidity handed to it overnight from its creation, or else it has failed, I think that is a completely unrealistic way of assessing it. Bitcoin has been growing in every metric that matters, and Bitcoin's been improving in every metric that matters. And there are simply no objectionable reasons why you would say that Bitcoin cannot work as a monetary system. And so to get to the point that Professor Seljan mentions, that Bitcoin, displacing a money is something that is very hard, I think it's not as hard as he makes it out to be. Hundreds of fiat currencies over the 20th century have been destroyed, several times over many currencies were destroyed several times, and they were replaced by new currencies or currencies of other countries. Silver was demonetized, seashells, all kinds of other kinds of money have lost their monetary role. And the people who used to use seashells, their network effect didn't protect them, because when people came into their island with gold, the harder money won. And this is the dynamic that Professor Seljan ignores. Bitcoin isn't a startup that needs to do marketing to attract people. Bitcoin isn't going to win because it's going to, have a better user experience than your Apple Pay or whatever. Bitcoin's value proposition is that it is hard money. And hard money beats out easy money and soft money, because soft money and easy money is easy to overproduce. And so anytime we look at history, and this is what I discuss extensively in my book, when people were using seashells, Europeans arrived, they can make seashells, they can dig out for seashells easily, they flood the supply of seashells, seashells lose their monetary role, people use gold. And the same has happened with many other media. And this is essentially the process that has been going on for the last 10 years with Bitcoin. It's a harder form of money, and it's gaining value because people would rather hold the harder money than the easier money. And also it's gaining value because all of the easier monies are being inflated at a much faster rate. And so that really is Bitcoin's competition. The problem, we can always nitpick with Bitcoin and find things that we think are wrong with Bitcoin, but that is the alternative. That is the only working alternative that can compete with government monies. And the problem with the other currencies that Professor Seljan mentions, and the problem with any other attempt to try and compete or to try and introduce a new monetary standard, the problem that as libertarians, I think people who probably are a lot of libertarians in the crowd. The problem is simply government won't allow a free market monetary system to function because they want to take it over. That's what happened with the gold system. Bitcoin's most important characteristic, probably, other than its hardness, is the fact that it resists government capture and control. Because of the evolution of Bitcoin, and this is something that it doesn't share with any of the other digital coins, which are all centralized because they were all born after Bitcoin, and because they'd never had the process of a neutral protocol growing on the internet on its own without a person being in charge, because the person who created it disappeared. All the other coins have someone in charge. All the other coins are trivial to compromise and trivial to capture. They are not realistic competitors to government money. They can be easily shut down. So the reason Bitcoin really can succeed is ultimately because of its hardness and because of its resistance to government capture. And I think those two things trump all the other considerations that Professor Seljan had mentioned.